In this beginner level Blender tutorial, we will make this animation of the solar system. No prior knowledge of Blender is required, but you should have the program already installed before you start. We're using Blender 3.1 in this tutorial, but it should work for various versions. This series consists of 6 parts. Part 1 introduces the Blender interface. Part 2, we will create the sun and make it shine. In Part 3, we will construct the inner planets using solid colors for the materials for all but the Earth. There, we will use a free image texture instead. In Part 4, we will make the outer planets and learn some very basic modeling techniques. In Part 5, we will set the planets in their orbits and animate them. In Part 6, we will animate the camera movement and render the final animation. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so let's take a look at the interface here. Over on the far right, top right corner, we have the Scene Collections outliner, and here you can organize all of the items in your scene into collections that you can then disable. Say you have a bunch of different stuff and you just want to work on one little piece, you can disable the things that you're not working on. We're going to do some slight reorganization here and change this over to scene stuff, and that's going to hold our camera and our light, and then we're going to actually create a new collection, and we're just going to call that planets. Below that, this is a properties window. This is something that you're going to use quite a bit. For any object that you have selected in the scene, you can then manipulate certain properties using these different tabs. Some of them will have slightly different properties depending on what they are. This is a light versus a 3D object, so they're going to have slightly different properties. But you can go in and set basically all of the different attributes for these objects here in this inspector panel. This here in the middle is the 3D viewport, and this is where we're going to do a lot of work. So I want to show you how to navigate this first. This is very important. So on your mouse, you're going to use your middle mouse wheel and scroll that, and that will zoom in and zoom out. You can then push down on that middle mouse wheel and use that to rotate your view around a point that it is focused on. You can then hit shift, hold shift on your keyboard and hold down the middle mouse button, and you can sort of grab the scene and move it around that way. If you hold control and then push the middle mouse button in and slide your mouse up and down, you can zoom in and zoom out that way as well. So you're going to want to just play around with that and get used to it, because this becomes crucial in sort of manipulating your viewpoint so that you can work on the piece of your model or animation that you need to. Okay, so in addition to navigating with the view with the mouse, what we're going to do is we're going to use the number pad on the keyboard. It really helps to have a full-size mouse and keyboard to do Blender. If you're doing it on a laptop, it gets really difficult. So I would say go buy a just basic mouse and keyboard and use that if you're on a laptop. So on your number pad, you're going to be able to use that to control the camera view as well. So hit the number 7 on the number pad, and it should snap to a top orthographic view. The difference between an orthographic view and a perspective view is that the perspective view, if you're looking at lines that are parallel, receding into the distance in that 3D perspective, they will look like they are going to meet at a vanishing point, even though we know that those lines are actually parallel. With an orthographic point of view, that doesn't happen. They are straight parallel lines to the horizon. So to see that, you can hit 5 on the number pad, and that's going to switch between the perspective and orthographic cameras. And you can see how these lines on the grid are now absolutely parallel to each other, even though they're supposed to be receding into the distance. So hit 5 again to get back into perspective mode. And so next on the keyboard, if you hit 1 on the number pad, that's going to take you into a front orthographic view. 3 takes you into a right orthographic view. If you hold Control on the keyboard and then hit 7, That's going to take you to the bottom orthographic view. It basically does the opposite of whatever that normal button is. So if you go Control 1, it's going to take you to the back instead of the front. And if you do Control 3, that's going to take you to the left view rather than the right view. 4 and 6 will allow you to rotate the view incrementally, and then 8 and 2 will do that for up and down as well. So those can be all very, very helpful in sort of navigating your view. Makes it very easy because sometimes you get sort of stuck in the weeds and you need to sort of reorient everything. Speaking of that, one of the most useful keys on the keyboard is the period on the number pad there. If you hit that, it's going to snap you to whatever object you have selected. This is really, really helpful. Say we are selected on this light here, and we want to get up to it. Just hit the period there and it'll snap you to it. Same thing here. Snaps the camera to it. That's super, super helpful because you're going to a lot of times have a very large layout and need to go between different spots in your scene, and that's really, really helpful. In addition, if you hit the 0 on the number pad, that's going to snap you into the camera view, and you can actually select the camera by just clicking on the camera frame. It turns orange when it's selected. And now that we're in the camera view, you can actually move the camera around using some keyboard controls. So let's try those out. If you hit G, that's going to grab the camera and give you sort of a free move around. Hit Escape to cancel any of the transforms that you do. So if you hit G and then hit Z, that's going to constrain your motion only on the Z axis. And then the same would work for X or Y if you want to constrain on those. Very, very useful is the rotate option. So if you hit R on the keyboard, it will rotate your camera. And so if you hit it once, it rotates it around sort of the central axis. Let's hit Escape, cancel that. And then if you hit it twice, double R, then it gives you sort of more of a free rotation that acts sort of like a camera on a tripod. Escape to cancel that. And those are your basic camera controls when you're in the camera view. If you want to control the camera outside, what you want to do is go over to the left side of the screen. You have some icons. This is the move icon, and it'll just let you move your camera around. But we want to change the axis orientation. So we're going to change this to local from global. And this is going to set it up and make it much easier for us to sort of move the camera in and out, oriented to the camera itself, rather than using the orientation that is global for the entire scene, which is this XY axis over here. The red is the X, the green is the Y. You can see that up here in this little gizmo over here. Identifies those. You can also manipulate the rotation and the position and the scale through this transform panel that pops out here. I use those quite a bit. All right. And so that's going to be the end of the first video. In this video, we just took a look at the basic interface and got a feel for how to navigate around the 3D viewport. In the next video, we're going to actually dive into making some stuff. First, we're going to make the sun, and then we're going to manipulate the materials so that it shines.